You got a lot of homework to do here. I hope you're writing it down, kids. You got to go look up Voyager stuff. You got to watch Calypso, that Star Trek short. I believe that's what it was called. You got work to do, okay? I'll be checking it in the morning when you come back to school tomorrow. You hear that? It's a time mouse. Kill it. Oh no, not again. Awayshikan looks through the view screen and says,
"Oh my god, is that a new constitution?"
No.
Uh-oh. I'm not supposed to be in this review. We're almost halfway through Star Trek Discovery Season 5. We're halfway through the final season. This is Facing the Strange. And we are facing the strange. We're facing the unknown. We're facing it head on. I got excited when I heard the name of this episode. Of course, not all the upcoming episodes are named, but some of them are named and they reveal things. Hopefully they're not really spoilery. But when I said, oh, they're facing the strange, okay, we're going to see something really weird, something unusual, something in space, something that can only really occur in Star Trek. A Star Trek thing. Forgive me for getting excited. That is what we got here in Face the Strange. As usual, I'm skipping the recap. I don't really need it. This is going to be a hard one to review. This is a weird episode. It's a bottled episode. It's kind of like a greatest hits episode. And we're putting everything in a blender. We're putting in time squared. We're putting in cause and effect. We're putting in trials and tribulations into the blender. That's right, it's going in the blender. No, don't do it, it'll be gross. Oh yeah, watch this. Glug, glug, glug. That's Face the Strange. We're facing a bunch of different Star Trek concepts thrown together, and I was getting whiplash trying to watch this. That's from that episode, this is from that episode, that's from that episode. Concept-wise. Not Easter eggs, not references, but just kind of thematic ideas. Time loops. We're in a time loop. The age-old, timey-wimey weird thing happens, and it becomes harder to follow the more you think about it. That being said, this episode isn't that bad. Without spoiling my review score, let's get the basic gist of what's going on here, and let's break it down for you. We're hot on the trail of Moll and Lack, but we do lose Moll and Lack. In fact, Moll and Lack are on some planet 15 hours ago, as it were. I think that's what they said. And they're doing some kind of shady business deal with some unknown alien. They hand in the bag. Latinum, why didn't you just stack it? It's hard to count this way. So he has to open the bag and touch it to count it. Red flags going off in your brain. They're covered with poison and he instantly dies. Poison that you touch and die. Pretty fearsome. And they just killed this guy. I don't know, to get back the Latinum, to teach him a lesson. He did try to change the terms of the deal. He tried to, oh, I'm sorry, but the original price has gone up. Oh yeah, well, now you're dead. Moll and Lack kill him. But not without taking a moment to look at a strange device. There's this little black kind of a mechanism that kind of slides open and they're looking at it. I wonder what this is. The camera hangs on it for a little bit too long. That means it might be important, or it's a complete red herring. Just like they were saying last episode. Lack wants to be free. Sounds good. I just want to get out of this. We'll get the progenitor tech, we'll sell it, and then we'll be free. No one will be chasing us. He basically says he just wants to be in the Federation. My brain is saying, oh, you just kind of want to be free, right? You kind of just want to be out of it. Well, I mean, you probably did some crime, but you can get out of it now if you turn yourself in. These penal colonies ain't that bad. At least they weren't bad 1,000 years ago. I don't know what it's like after the burn. Man, I could really use some burn flashbacks right now. The more time goes on here, the more things are relying on the nature of the burn and what it did to Starfleet, and the nature of the Red Directive. And I'm just not getting a tactile feel for it. I'm just not understanding it. I need a flashback from Rayner. I kind of want an episode that's entirely as a flashback to Captain Rayner on, what was it, the Antares, and just how the burn changed the character of Starfleet operations. I just want to see that. They keep referencing Red Directive and how it's kind of born out of that era of Starfleet. I assume Rayner's been on multiple Red Directive missions, and I want to see what that feels like. I need to see it to understand it. and now I'm wanting it. It would be cool if there was an episode that was entirely set before season 3 of Discovery. That would be excellent. I don't know if we're going to get that, though. But we do have an episode that is set in the past, in a sense, with this episode. Not to spoil it. Meanwhile, on the Discovery, after Moll and Lack's business is finished, we're getting into a bit of a butting of the heads, right? Command styles. I want to do it this way. You want to do it that way. We arrive at the coordinates we're supposed to be at for the next piece of this puzzle. Moll and Lack seem to have disappeared. Reese says maybe this is a trap. Rayner kind of disagrees. They're fighting over basically the nature of how to go about this. Do we wait? Do we keep going? Do we back off? Yada, yada, yada. Rayner is too forceful. He's a little bit too direct. If this is the example, random example of Starfleet command style at this time, am I to assume that's the command style across all ships? And if that is the case, wouldn't then Discovery be forced to adopt that to be up to code or as up to regulation? Is the Discovery the example for the correct command structure for Starfleet at this time, or is it the opposite? And Discovery should adopt the command styling of Starfleet as a whole now. That's just what I'm trying to figure out. And they basically say that Rayner's command style is born out of the burn, which I have not physically been a part of. I have not really seen it. I do not know it. Right? That's my issue here. I think the season could go really far if we have that flashback episode I just mentioned before. In my quarters now, whatever, ready room, whatever it was, unacceptable. Burnham says that to Rayner. Fine, the captain says it's unacceptable, then it is. Rayner says, I'm just used to the burn, and we shouldn't be so, so attached to our crew, which is a healthy idea. Being professionally unattached is good too. But Michael is saying these are our new, this is how we do things. This is how we save the Federation. I guess she's right, by the way. And I know you're in flux right now. And then, of course, Rayner goes way out of line and says, cut me the I get you bullshit. And he knows immediately as he said it that it was a wrong thing to say. He says, sorry, that was out of line. Correct. And it's just the classic Star Trek command style differences coming up against each other. It's the immovable force meeting the immovable object. Meeting the infinitely powerful force. What should happen? You can't have too many cooks in the kitchen. Too many two tigers on the same mountain. I've heard that one somewhere before. So which do you prefer? Right? Do you want the hardline Rayner or softer and easier going, in a sense, Michael Burnham? I don't know. I do know Michael is the captain, and that carries a lot of weight with it. So we're going to defer to the captain on this one. Everything's going fine, but something from the bridge. We're hitting a strange thing. There's a strange Star Trek thing in front of the ship. What is it? I don't know. It's just kind of like some kind of energy thing. So there's an energy thing happening. Oh, this must be Star Trek. Okay, click. And as soon as the lights start blinking, Rayner and Michael are like, we better beam to the bridge or something. And they go to beam, and I was thinking, my first instinct here was, whoa, don't do that. If the lights are flickering in the ship, they just found a strange thing, and we're having like a general systems failure. I do not want to be interacting with the ship's transportation system. I'm assuming that the badges interact with the ship's transporter. Maybe they don't. Maybe it's all on board in the badge. I don't know. But I would be really scared about transporting right now, given how scary it is normally. But they do it, luckily. At the beginning of this episode, there was a tiny little bug, like that, but much smaller, maybe a quarter the size of this, running around in Adira's quarters. As Adira was reminiscing about Gray and looking at a picture and laughing and smiling and haha, it's complicated, I don't know what's going on. Just ignore that bug. Don't worry about it. Well, it got back to engineering. And it crawled into like a little power manifold thing behind a panel. Is there a significance as to why it had to be there? I'm not really sure. I say engineering, but this is kind of like the spore the spore room. You know the room where Stamets used to go into that box and then breathe in a bunch of spores or something and then go crazy and the ship spore jumps? And they used to have the tardigrade in there. Remember that? It's that room. The fact that I'm still confused about what these rooms are, where they are, and what they do, and what they're called is a little bit worrisome. But the fact remains that this bug got away, and the Discovery is now traveling randomly through points in time. Okay, we're trying to deduce what this is. Is this some kind of neural weapon? Are they doing this to trick us? Is this part of the trap? It is part of the trap. Set maybe by Moll and Lack. We don't really know. How did they get this bug on our uniform? They must have been on Trill with us. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more, say no more. That's probably what happened. I mean, they were there at the end of the episode. And Moll and Lack did say that when we get ahead of the Discovery, when we get ahead of them. So Moll and Lack really do think they can get ahead of the Discovery, and maybe they just did, as you saw in the first scene of this episode, the Moll and Lack scene. This is a time bug, according to Rayner. It's something he's seen because he is, from the future. A Krenim chronophage. If you don't know what Krenim are, feel free to do your homework on Voyager. Just know that the Krenim, or Krenim technology in general, is based around this idea of the chronotons and interacting with time. They had a thing called a chronoton torpedo that could flux between times so that you couldn't actually deflect it because it was never in the same time at the same time. It's never in the same time at the same time. It's not really here, but it's more like where and when and how and who. It's the Krenim. I'm not doing your homework for you. Go watch Voyager. This is a Krenim chronophage. Rayner did say designed, so it is a tool. It's a weapon, and it's a very powerful weapon because this little bug has the ability to expand some chronoton field, I suppose, around a ship, cycle it randomly through time. So, in hopes that the crew would have no idea what was happening, blink, and they missed it 6 hours, something like that. Blink, boink, and they missed months. Imagine a weapon like that. I could say, "Here, have a time bug, friend," and it crawls up onto your shirt and it engulfs your body in a field that causes you to move backwards through time for months on end, and then you wake up like nothing happened, and the whole world has gone on without you. And oh no, I missed months of time, and the temporal war must have been really bad. Imagine these kinds of weapons. I can see why they tried to ban time travel and everything to do with it outright. It ain't worth it, kids. It ain't worth it. Don't mess around with time machines. It ain't worth it. Needless to say, the Discovery is in quite a bit of a pickle, but because Rayner and Michael beamed out at just the exact moment, they are free from the effects of the time change. Not sure why, but I'm going to go with it. I'm going to give you that episode. I'll give you that. I'll hand wave that for you. If you can tell a good story, there you go. There's one other person on the ship that isn't affected by the time change. Paul Stamets, because he has tardigrade DNA. He's turned into the Elorian from, yesterday's Enterprise. The one person who can tell if something's wrong with time. He's Guinan now. He's playing the role of Guinan. If you've seen yesterday's Enterprise, TNG, go watch yesterday's Enterprise. Go watch Cause and Effect. Go watch Time Squared. Go watch Trials and Tribulations. Why Trials and Tribulations? We're going back to a previous version of this ship. We're on the ship in Season 1 and Season 2 and Season 3. And we're looking around, and we're on this ship. And we can't interact with these people. We're in the past. And we're just kind of walking around in our new snazzy uniforms. And the old crew is walking around. Don't interact with them. We've already established, outright here, that we are in the one timeline theory. Okay, we've already said that. We've established it. That's okay. Rayner says we cannot interact with the past without possibly destroying our future. So there you go. There you have it. We can't be seen. We need to figure out what's going on with the ship. We need to get to that time bug. And we need to find Paul Stamets. We find Paul Stamets eventually. He, of course, because of his tardigrade DNA, he knows that this isn't right. There's something wrong. Blah, blah, blah. Culber does zap him, put him back to sleep, which is exactly what you do in Star Trek. If somebody's dying in med bay and they're saying something like, I'm the only one who can stop it, maybe you shouldn't put them to sleep. I'm not a doctor, but, I wonder sometimes just how savvy these Star Trek people are. How much Star Trek do these Star Trek people really know? I had a gasp one moment. Paul was talking to Reno back in season 2. Now, we're back on the season 2 version of Discovery. You'll just have to watch it to understand what I'm saying. We're cycling randomly through moments in time in Discovery's history, and only Paul, Michael, and Rayner know. He ends up talking to Jett Reno, and Jett Reno says, he's asking in no uncertain terms, what would I do to stop a time loop? But he asks it in such a lofty, scientific, and academic way that you can't really tell what he's asking. But Reno catches onto it, and Reno says, are you stuck in a time loop? And I was like, I was so excited. This would have been so cool. Imagine if we went back in time because we were stuck in a time loop that was cycling us randomly through time. And because the crew of a starship in Starfleet have seen some crazy stuff, maybe one of them might believe you on just firsthand, right? Just at face value, maybe one of them would believe you. Maybe that was going to be Reno. I was so excited. But then Reno turns around and basically says that was a joke. I don't really mean it. Haha. I was like, dang it. This would have been so cool if this was turned into a Reno, Stamets, Rayner, and Michael episode where Reno was the only one who couldn't go through the time loop with them, but believe them. That would have been cool if you could convince Reno that you were actually, I'm in a time loop because of these things. What am I supposed to do about that? And then Reno would say, this is Star Trek. Maybe he's right. But that's not what happened, sadly. We end up in what I thought was going to be the Short Treks episode Calypso. If you've seen that, one of the better Short Treks that came out a few years ago. They used to do these really, really short little Star Trek movies that were that long, yay big, yay deep, and were self-contained plot lines. And one of them where it was Discovery in the distant future, alone, abandoned, and one person on the ship who just befriended the computer named Zora. And I knew just the way it was shot that we were going back to Calypso. That episode, look it up. Again, you got a lot of homework to do here. I hope you're writing it down, kids. You got to go look up Voyager stuff. You got to watch Calypso, that Star Trek short. I believe that's what it was called. You got work to do, okay? I'll be checking it in the morning when you come back to school tomorrow. The way it's set up, it looks like Calypso. They did a very believable job of putting dust on everything. The Discovery looked old. We interact with Zora. Zora, what's going on? You guys are back. You died so long ago, and I was so sad, and I'm glad that you're back. And we open the window. Open the view screen, please, Zora. And they open it, and of course the Discovery is directly in front of the Federation, which looks baked. It looks cooked. It looks like a burnt potato. It looks like you tried to make a baked potato and then fell asleep. And it's just a blackened husk of what it once was. And now we know our possible future. The future of this timeline, lest we change it, if we don't get the progenitor tech. According to Zora, Moll and Lack gave the progenitor tech, in a manner of speaking, to the Breen, who eventually used it to destroy the Federation. And that is what I realized on repeat viewings. The actual plot-wise point of this episode is to show you, in no uncertain terms, what happens if we do not win. That's the point of it. When I first watched this, I said, that was pointless, that sucked. And then I watched it again, I liked it a little bit more, and I realized that that's really why this is here. This episode was put as the 4th episode on purpose before viewers started to wonder, I don't really know what's supposed to happen if we fail. This kind of sucks, so I don't care. Where's the tension? We got it back with this episode. And I commend that. It's smart to have it here. It's smart to have a few episodes to get you into the plot line of this season-long arc, and then kind of drop on you, okay, here's the bad stuff. Here's what could happen. That's smart. Kind of like putting it at the back end instead of loading up the first few episodes with doom and gloom. Not a bad choice. We find out that there's a pattern to these time fluctuations. There's a conical wave. We look at the hologram. Yada, yada, yada. Let's go meet up on, what was it, Deck 13. We meet up there with Paul, Rayner, Stamets. Deck 13 is their base of operations for surviving this chronophage or time bug. We eventually deduce that we can't get close to this bug because it has a shield around it. It has like a what did they call it? A chronoton shield, and we need a chronoton stabilizer to deflect the shield. Is that what they said? Essentially, you throw something at it. Very smart, by the way. They throw an object at it. The object turns to dust before it can get to the bug, because time is accelerated to the point where it goes so far into the future that it turns to nothing. It just crumbles away to nothing. Interesting idea. However, initially, when Rayner finds the bug, he knew what a time bug was. He's the one who brought up the idea that it was a time bug. He understood this. He knew about the temporal war and all that stuff. He was also the first one to try to grab it. Shouldn't he have known? I thought that was a little strange. I was like, why did Rayner try to grab it? And then Paul say, no, don't grab it. You'll rip it off. It'll cause all kinds of problems, blah, blah, blah. We'll be stuck forever. It's weird that Rayner didn't know that. And it's weird that we just put in the scene then for no reason. It was only there. It was like a minute or two of it. I would have cut it. What's the point in Rayner trying to touch the bug that he should have known about? Because he's obviously more learned about the ways of modern era Starfleet combat and things like that than Stamets would be, even though he's not a scientist or in the science division. I don't know. It's hairy. I would have cut it, but it's not horrible. But it's just weird that he tried to grab it. He does end up grabbing it later, but with the chronoton stabilizer, in a manner of speaking. We have a little Star Trek moment in Deck 13 where we're talking, let's do this, no, let's do this, no, let's do this, I have this idea, and we build off each other. You see, this episode's about camaraderie. It's about Rayner learning to not be so much of a lone wolf, even though he was a captain. Indeed, he is in engineering, talking to Paul Stamets, and Stamets was like, I'm trying to figure out how the integrity, the structural integrity field, and how the inertial dampeners work with the 23rd century tech on this ship now, because we're in the past, and it's getting muddied up with the 32nd century stuff. And Rayner just says, well, unmuddy it. And Stamets is just like, okay, listen, I can't have you doing blah, 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 and we need to work together. And he just kind of just dresses him down right there. He really gives him the business. And I was just, and Rayner apologized, but I was just thinking, man, all Rayner did was say, unmuddy it. Like, it's just kind of like something you'd say in the heat of the moment. Like, it's like, man, this is really confusing. We're running out of time. And then the guy on the other end of the communicator says, figure it out. That's kind of like what I took from it. It wasn't really Rayner just dunking on Stamets. It was like, well, unmuddy it. It's not perfect, but, Stamets really hated it. I was really surprised. But in order to have an arc for Rayner with all these characters, we have to bust them down so they can be built back up again, so we can get satisfied when they smile at each other later. And they do. And I was satisfied. Let's teach them how these two old dogs still know the best tricks. Whatever that means. Whatever that means, Rayner, we're showing these new dogs the best tricks that the old dogs know. We do a time loop through to dry dock in San Francisco when Discovery was first being assembled. I assume it was being constructed and then floated up into orbit and then assembled up there. And we do look out and we look at that bridge, and I was so excited. Imagine, I don't want to review the episode for what it wasn't. I don't want to review against on what I wanted it to be. I want to review the content of the episode, but I got to be honest, when we went there, we went back in time, we were on Earth, I was thinking, oh man, this would be so cool if it wasn't the time bug, and this was intentional. It wasn't a trap by Moll and Lack. This was part of Dr. Velik and his team's effort to hide these puzzle pieces. They hid one in the past. They found a flaw in space-time that they told no one about that led directly to Earth that far back in time, or they adjusted it somehow mechanically. They had some kind of tool that would alter the naturally formed time flaw and led it to the time and space of 23rd century Earth and hid the puzzle piece there so that it could only be opened then and then would seal forever after a certain amount of time. So you had to go back in time to open it. Oh my God, that would have been sick. I think that's a better idea than what they had for this episode. I think that's better. And I thought it, and I was like, oh, dang it. Dang it. Okay, well, I gotta focus. Focus, Mark. Review the episode for what it is. Don't try to go off on a tangent here, which I might be doing now. But doesn't that sound cool? Hiding the next puzzle piece in the past. They didn't do it, but we did go through all these different events and times. You know, we went to the past Discovery. We got into a fight with Michael Burnham on behalf of Michael Burnham. Michael Burnham fought old Michael Burnham. And these characters, they're the new actors, the same actors, they're just older, playing a younger version of themselves. And you can tell they don't look quite right, but I'll kind of excuse it. Michael's hair that they were redid to appear as though it did in season 1 looked a little wrong. It didn't look quite perfect, but it was close enough. And there's a fight that ensued between Michael and Michael for, I don't know, some reason. And it was not half as cool as the creators of the show thought it was. It went on a little bit too long. I kept thinking, what if Michael accidentally blinds old Michael, and then new Michael is blind and then can't complete the mission? I'm thinking of all these cooler things that could have happened, but it never really happened. But I mean, we still ended up with a cool, kind of slick episode, and regardless, hilarity ensues with Linus. We have to go back to the bridge to convince the crew of whatever, because Airiam's there. We have to talk to Airiam. And Stamets is like, oh no, Airiam's there. Oh no. Rayner's, who's Airiam? Rayner says, who's Airiam? And half the audience is like, who's Airiam? Airiam was someone from like season 1 and season 2 that died before they could go to the future. And it feels like now we're talking to Airiam on the bridge, and I'm thinking, hey, there's more Airiam here than we got in the first 3 seasons. First 2. Would have been cool if we kind of knew this character. Would have been pretty cool. Season 5, it's kind of the last season. It's a little late to be learning about Airiam. It's a little bit late to learn about Reese. A little late to be learning about Awashkin. These characters who should have been, like, at the forefront. Who should have been, like, acts of daring do. They should have been swinging in off a chandelier. But no, they kind of just, we'll just be furniture on the bridge. Bridge furniture. I feel so bad for them. But Discovery is not supposed to be an ensemble cast. It's never designed that way. It was designed to be a Michael Burnham show. That's just the way it was. And for better or for worse, it's ending, and we experienced it all. And you did come for me on this adventure. You came with me. Thank you for that. Our plan here is to crack the warp bubble. Okay, we have to get past the fact that when you get close to the time bug, time accelerates in that field, and it disintegrates any object that tries to touch it. That's bad. The warp bubble takes from what I understand, the warp bubble will take a area of local space with you through the field faster than light. Because you were in local space at all times, you were not affected by relativity. That's the bubble. The pressure between the bubble and outside the bubble is your Cochrans, right? So a warp engine has a certain amount of Cochran output that will allow a vessel of a certain size and shape to push against space-time, trying to crush it, to keep local space inside untorqued. That's what the warp drive is doing. So when they break the warp bubble at maximum warp, we should go back to being affected by relativity, as in the change in time, the shear of time that you would normally be protected by from the warp bubble. If we break that at the right time, we should be able to put the chronoton stabilizer through the shield in time that is not as accelerated, so that we don't die when we try to do it. Now, I thought in relativity, the effects are not exactly local. They're like super local. They're like, imagine If I flew the Discovery at the speed of light without the warp bubble to protect me from relativity, everything would seem fine until I returned to the place that I embarked from. Then I would realize that a lot of time had gone by, because more time had gone by for them than had gone by for me, because I was moving at the speed of light. That's how relativity works. I don't think it would work in local space when the time bug is on the Discovery. Okay? If we break the warp bubble, we're affected by relativity. Local space should still be the same. Right? Am I crazy? If local space is still the same, why would that affect the time bug? Then again, you have things, understood concepts like that, interacting with exotic concepts like chronotons and time loop and Krenim stuff. So and the transporter and things like that. So, and the warp drive in a sense. So I don't know how this would play out, but it was odd to me that we would invoke being affected by relativity without the warp bubble to change something in local space, such as the time bug, when it doesn't feel like it would operate that way. That's just how I felt. I looked at it and I was like, okay, this feels like there's an engineering problem there. I was like, whoa, wait a minute. There's something wrong with the physics here. But it wouldn't be the first time this has happened. Then again, saying it happened before is not an excuse to do it again. That is not how you design things. That's not a right way of thinking. Oh, this happened all the time in Star Trek. Yeah, it did, but it doesn't mean you should do it again. This should be better. My thinking here is that every Star Trek show should be better than the one before, and better and better and better and better, and make more and more and more sense. But, it managed to deliver an okay episode that ultimately was about trying to convince your past self that you are them. I'm not an imposter. I know you. We go to the bridge. We talk to Airiam. We have to convince Airiam, who was in control of the bridge at the time, to break the warp bubble. We do it by, serenading them by saying, I know you. I'm Michael, blah, blah, blah. Here's why I'm Michael. I know you. And how this plays into Rayner's character arc. Rayner is a loner. He has to win by saying how much he knows about people. Reese and Michael somehow in season 1 get to engineering. I don't know how Michael did this, because Michael was basically almost a fugitive mutineer at this time. Alarming how she got down there and got Reese to follow her. I don't know. We need to go down there to engineering to stop these guys, blah, blah, blah. Rayner and Paul are trying to sabotage the ship, quite literally. And season 1 Michael and season 1 Reese are there to stop them. Rayner basically says, I know you, Reese. Again, Reese. You love this ship. I love it too. I know you, Michael. When you first came on this bridge at the Discovery, when you became captain, you didn't think you were cut out to do it. So we kind of, we spritz him up with all these little affirmations, and that's how we win. But it's coming from Rayner. So it's kind of like, okay, this works for Rayner's character arc, and it's a unique moment in Star Trek when your sci-fi adventure plot actually feels like it belongs in a character's emotional arc. That's where this one actually succeeds over the past few episodes. This is like, it's more of an old style episode in a way, because the thematic and emotional arcs we're going through feel fit for purpose to the sci-fi action plot that the episode is taking place in. It feels like we're putting a round peg into a round hole in this episode. That's what's strong about it. It's weak in some other areas, but we do break this warp bubble. We do put the chronoton stabilizer on the bug. We do nullify the bug, and everything is A-okay. And we transport, quite literally, back to exactly where we were at the beginning of this episode, with Michael and Rayner back having that conversation off the bridge, talking about their differences in command style. We're right back to where we were, except we know now that we got along because we were able to meld our ideas, and we were able to have Rayner open up and be more amenable to understanding the crew, because literally understanding the crew at a more intimate level is kind of what saved him and the ship in this plot. Now, your mileage may vary on how believable this was. How believable was it that I could say, hey, you, I'm you from the future. You better believe me because I know secrets about you. Here's some. Maybe you believe it. I don't know. It could have been an alien. It could have been a hologram. It could have been something that was reading your mind. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, we were able to convince the past crew of Discovery to sabotage their own ship to save it in the future. We did get seen a few times, and I did think we may have caused some timey-wimey problems. Do Gen, Owaishikan, Airiam, these characters, do they remember Michael being the captain before she became the captain now? Do they remember that? They saw her. We're apparently in the same timeline, I guess. I don't know. I should probably stop worrying about these things. You know how I am with time travel episodes if you've been on this channel for a while. It's okay if you think something totally different. That's fine. We end up with Stamets saying, I wish I could have just crushed you, you little bug. Like I crushed those engineers I told to leave this room. This episode has like no less than 3 different instances of Stamets shooing everyone out of engineering. Everybody out. Everybody get out now. Everybody out. There's a breach and you're breathing in spores and a mushroom can grow in your lung. And then there's one that happens kind of like off screen. And then a second one where you just tell someone to get out. Like, and then in the episode, what was it? Under the Twin Moons? I think is that the one where Book talks to Moll and Lack that time in engineering with that kind of like black communication device, the black comms. He tells everybody to get out of engineering, does he not? So this season is now the season where Stamets tells people to get out of a room. This is the Stamets get out here, guys. Stamets show. I'm calling it now. That's the official subtitle for the season. Adira walks in, and we met Adira for a brief moment at the beginning of this episode, and now again, primarily to establish how much time has gone by. Adira asked Stamets, why did I just blink and 6 hours went by? The whole reason why that line was in there was so that the audience could tell how much time had gone by in reality, like in the context of the show, which was smart. So on second viewing, the things that seemed pointless and seemed kind of like that were kind of dangling actually make a little bit more sense on repeat viewings. A lot of wasted potential, but got a little better on second viewing. I've seen better time loop episodes. I've seen better bottle episodes. This episode is entirely in a bottle, in a sense. It's entirely on the Discovery, which is fine to me. This episode didn't look as cheap as the previous episodes. It's still not quite as good as the first episode. Red Directive, I think, was the cooler one so far. Musically, I don't know. Did you hear music in this episode, guys? Did you hear anything? I didn't really hear anything. I thought you could have told me this episode had no music, and I believe you. I didn't hear anything. The fight scenes looked not great to me. Michael fighting Michael didn't look great to me. Plot wise, it feels pointless to the overall total plot of this arc, the season long arc, until you realize this episode provided you with the bad scenario. Should we lose to whoever gets the progenitor tech? Should we not get the progenitor tech first? That's what could happen. That's the actual point of the episode. The point of the episode, totally plot-wise, is learning the bad ending. That's what it's really about there. Thematically, it's much more dense. Rayner is learning to cope with not being in the burn anymore. He's in flux. He's learning to be friends with people again. He's learning to open up, and he's learning to entrust a certain amount of authority to other people again. You know, he's learning to he's being broken down, built back up as a team player on Team Discovery. And his arc, it is unique in this episode that his arc is essential to completing the plot. He needs to do this in order to save the ship. That's when it's good. That's when something good's happening, when you can feel that. The synergy between plot and theme is actually working here, which is something that doesn't usually happen now. Visually, we do get to see the old Discovery. That was kind of cool. The old uniforms. Can't say I'm nostalgic over them, but they were there. Airiam looks cool. It'd be cool if we had a character like that in the bridge again. Kind of like a robot person. It was kind of neat. I didn't really know Airiam in Discovery before. I've seen every season, and I don't really know Airiam. It's kind of sad. I really think everybody should get a chance before this ends. This better not be the Stamets episode. I want him to go somewhere. I want everyone to do something, but maybe I'm hoping beyond hope here, because we got 6 episodes left, and if you got one that feels like it's wasting time, that's a nightmare. Some people may view this episode and say it was a waste of time. Some people might. I might even you may even be able to convince me of that. But for what I got, I was okay with it. Like I said, the theme is important. Michael goes back in time slightly and meets Book, in her quarters when she needs to get the material for the holodeck to operate the chronoton stabilizer. She goes back to her room, sees Book. Book doesn't know it's future Michael. So, what's the problem here? Michael loves Book, but Michael doesn't want to be with Book in the future, I guess, because Book betrayed the Federation. Past Book did not. So she's more open to being with Book in this alternate past, and she avails herself of it and kind of like hugs him up. And I'm just thinking, just stop worrying about it, Michael. Just freaking stop making it complicated. Just everyone has to be together at the end. Just do that. Lost love. Since the first episode, that's been an established overarching theme for this season. The lost love, losing your legacy. But in this episode, nested in that, like a stacking doll, we have Rayner getting the love of the crew, which is very cool. Musically, like I said, there's nothing going on. Visually, it's all right seeing these things. Plot-wise, blink and you'll miss it, and you'll realize it's actually kind of important. Bit of a sleeper, I think. Originally, I didn't like it at all, and I started to like it a little bit more. I have a feeling people are going to like it as they go on. It's not perfect. There's some head scratchers here and there. When Rayner and Michael first arrive on the past Discovery, right after the retrofit, they say that biosensors have been installed. Do you have a workaround for that? And Michael kind of like puts in the override code. But Michael has to be the one to go to the quarters, her quarters, to get the material for the chronoton stabilizer because it has biosensors. It has to be me. I have to go. It has to be me. It has biosensors. But couldn't we override that? If we override biosensors, do we also override the specific biosensors in the door frame, I suppose, to Michael's quarters? And if we did that, and since nobody knows Rayner would go, and then Book would find Rayner in, in Michael's quarters. Could have been funny, could have been weird, could have been very dangerous. But we had to come up with a way that it couldn't be Rayner to go to Michael's quarters, so we had to forget that we could override the biosensors. I don't know. Am I looking too deep into this? With all that out of the way, we're winning on theme, winning on plot if you really look. No music, visuals in the middle. I'm going to go ahead and have to give this one, I want to give it a 6. I want to do it. I can't do it. I just can't do it. I have to go ahead and give this episode a 6. Okay? I'm giving this episode a 6, alright? Star Trek Discovery Season 5, Episode 4, Face of Strange. You're getting a 6. Could have been better, but here we are. I'm Lieutenant Mark, and I'm going to see you next time I see you. So long.